Rare tool alert. Rare tool alert. It's rare! Be careful! Okay, welcome back to another episode of Hand Tool Rescue. Today, as you just heard from the Rare Tool Alert, this tool's rare. And it's only rare because I can't find anything else about it online other than um, one little bit of documentation in a catalog from 1913. Other than that, there isn't even another photo of one on the internet, apparently. So I don't specifically know if they're way more common somewhere else, but for my research, I couldn't really find very much. It's a really small and kind of odd designed blower slash pump, but it looks amazing, and the valve is incredibly ornate. So I'm really excited to kind of just preserve this one and repair and replace what kind of needs to be done. Um, so I just took off the oiler, and now I'm taking off the pressure release or the regulator. Uh, I finally figured out near the end how it actually works and what its purpose is. But it was odd, and I didn't even bother taking it fully apart because it's not worth it. It's just needing to be quickly derusted and then put back all of the brass components in this tool will not be polished or touched in any way other than just a cleaning, because polishing brass on antique things lowers the value greatly, and especially for something as rare as this, you don't want to be messing with any of that. So everything just kind of gets a light cleaning, and that is it. And just look at this valve, it's insane. I don't know why it's so ornate. It just seems to be a cast piece. It's nothing that was engraved or anything crazy. So maybe these were mass produced. I have not seen another one online. Maybe if someone comes across another valve like this, it'll lead to more details on what exactly this specific one was used for in its lifetime. Here I'm using a trick that I did show in a previous video. You can make soft jaw vice grips by just melting some hot glue onto the teeth, and then using it as you would normally. I need a hot glue gun. That would be nice. I got a bunch of like 300 glue sticks in an auction. It just came with something else that I wanted, so I have a bunch of glue sticks, and this is really the only time I ever get to use them, and I don't even have a hot glue gun. But it works fantastically. It doesn't ruin the brass at all, doesn't touch the patina, doesn't scratch it, so it's a very effective method when you need like extra grip than something else like those, what I have later on with the red plastic on them. Those are called Sweet Lips. Someone sent me those in the mail, and I thank the person, whoever did, because I do not remember. Here I'm trying to show the internal spring, so it's just a thread, like a threaded rod on a spring, and that keeps the lid, that screwed on lid, down onto the cylinder. There's no point in trying to take it apart. It doesn't really do anything magical. It needs cleaning, so as long as it just gets derusted, I'm completely fine with that. These two are the little oil ports. I'm surprised they're screws. I guess you have to unscrew and put some oil and then screw it back on. It might just be for, dusty environments or something like that. I guess you don't want any debris getting into the areas where parts are moving. So I am not going to keep the actual pipe. All these little pieces of pipe I will just be discarding, but the actual connectors as in this elbow here and the three-way pipe connector I just set down. Those I will keep. They have an awesome patina on them, something I can't recreate, something I don't want to get rid of with the Evaporest, so they're just going to be set aside and the pipes will be replaced since those pipes are entirely scratched up beyond normal for some reason. Getting the two sides of the pump off was actually way more work than I thought it would be. I thought they'd just pop right off. Even with these pins, they should kind of just slide out. There's enough oil and stuff inside that it should have kept it lubricated. But it took more than just trying to tap it out after trying for a few minutes. It wasn't moving past that initial gap you see right here. So I decided, why not just try a gear puller? So I set that up, and the arbor that it's on has a nice little indent for it, so I wasn't damaging anything in any way. I went really slowly because these are cast pieces. I don't want to snap something in half, so it's just about taking your time and making sure you don't destroy a tool that's quite rare and possibly an important part of history. I don't know. You can finally see the innards, which I was really excited to see what was going on in here. And it looks like it's just a single vane blower or even a pump. It should work as a pump. I don't think you're supposed to pump water, but I'm not really sure what else you would be pumping. Anyways, it's very simple. It's like 4 pieces in the entire internals. And it's kind of cool to see how simple that was made, and it should work just fine, I'm assuming. Trying to rip off the other side was a little more scary in that it didn't want to budge, and that's when I start having anxiety that I'm gonna crack something. If I cracked one of these, I'd probably just cry, and the rest of the film would just be me crying in the corner as to like what I've done to this tool that lasted over 100 years before I decided to ruin it. So here I'm just saving that elbow. It's very simple. They're not at all like the ones you can buy at the local hardware store or currently, so they're really kind of neat, and I didn't want to replace these with more modern looking ones. It's just not necessary and wasteful anyways. And that's why here I can absolutely destroy this pipe with the vice grips. I don't need it. If you want one of these pipes, come and let me know, and I can send you really old pipes, which may not even be that old. Who knows? Who knows when this was last touched? And I'll deal with kind of when this was last messed with fairly soon, because that's a question that I had when trying to restore / preserve parts of this specific blower. And here I'm removing the tag. This one was much more difficult to get out than the one that I did in the previous video on the small lathe. I tried initially to just cut a slot in it so I could kind of loosen up the pins holding it in, and they were just kind of shattering into pieces, so it wasn't really worth it. They were peened over too thin to make an adequate slot for a slotted screwdriver to move around, so I decided to just shear them off with the razor blade. It works just fine. It shouldn't damage the plate at all, so it came out great. All you just need to do after is drill out the brass pins, and then you're good to go. So now I'm going to tackle the oiler, which was really all kind of seized up and probably hadn't been opened up in an incredibly long time. But it's fun though. It's always fun to take these apart because usually they're easy because oil makes life easy. But they always really do clean up well, and they look great after. I won't be polishing this one, but it's more of just trying to get the seals replaced because they're not doing anything, and to get the glass on both the sight, which I'm touching right now, and the main housing for the oiler, the larger piece of glass above it. The sight is used to look into to see how quickly the oil is dripping, and you can adjust the drips accordingly to the rate of lubrication you would need for whatever you're doing. Here you can see the old crusty cork, hopefully cork, probably asbestos gasket, but it does look like a cork rubber gasket. It's hard to pry off, only because this is glass. You know, I can't put that much pressure on it. It's just gonna shatter, and if this shatters, then my whole life will shatter, and I'll once again just cry in the corner in deep sadness that I ruined something so awesome. You can always tell kind of the original Oilers from more modern remakes of the Oilers because the glass, the actual thickness of the wall of this glass is much thicker. It's just insanely thin on the ones you would buy currently off eBay or Amazon or something. They're just the glass is like paper thin, way too delicate. So it's nice to see the nice thick glass every once in a while. So everything's going into the Evaporest, even some of the brass components that have steel parts in them. Luckily, the Evaporest won't remove the black oxide off of, or I don't even know if it's black oxide, the oxidation or the patina off of the brass. So it's a good way to kind of clean the steel parts inside of brass components while leaving that patina on it, which is exactly what we're trying to do. The other reason why I'm dunking it in is because of this exact coating, this reddish maroon coating. I'm not exactly sure what it is. It looks like a primer, but it's above the original Japanning, so that obviously wouldn't be the case. I tested it for lead, and it didn't have lead, so that, to me at least, seems like something, or someone, painted this more recently with a more modern paint that doesn't contain lead. I don't know why they chose that color. Maybe it was red and faded aggressively, but that's just the worst color of all time. Regardless, it's all having to come off, so into the sand blaster it goes. Okay, so now the exciting part. This is the original black Japanning that I have in this jar here. I made it. I've made it before, and I've used it on hand planes because almost all the hand planes were finished with this finish, if they're a fairly old hand plane. So the original recipe is just boiled linseed oil, turpentine, and asphaltum, and that's what makes it really black. It's basically asphalt. So it's a very hard finish when it does fully cure. You can also do a quick cure, not a quick cure, but kind of a quicker, easier recipe, and that's just spar, varnish, and asphaltum mixed together. And then you gotta let it chill for a little bit, like 24 hours, and it will thicken, and then you can use it however you would like. You can just add more turpentine or whatever if it gets too thick. It's very versatile. And then you bake it for a few hours at 100-degree increments. In this one, I did an hour at 200 degrees and then let it cool, and then an hour at 300 degrees. Anything over 300, when I was doing kind of some experiments, seemed to have a wrinkling effect on the paint. I think it was just drying too quickly. Regardless, it needs to be baked, because if you don't bake it, you have to wait 30 plus days for it to cure, which is an insanely long amount of time, and you guys would never see videos from me. It would be more than just only once a month. So that's why I decided to bake it. It does stink horribly, though. So it's great to bake it in your house with small children. It adds that nice scent of asphalt everywhere. So this is me just cleaning the glass components like I was talking about earlier. And you could see how they clean up wonderfully. Everything's shiny and clear again. All the brass parts are just getting a little bit of some soap and water, which is what I'm cleaning everything with. And then that's basically it. I don't need to go crazy with any other cleaning methods. You really got to take it easy. The only thing that I am replacing on these are the cork gaskets. So I just roughly cut them out. They don't need to be precise at all, as long as the inner wall of the glass is touching some sort of rubber gasket at some point, then it will seal just fine, and I won't have to worry about all the oil leaking out everywhere, which is not really what you want. So the bottom gasket was easy, and the top one was similar, but I did forget to cut a little hole for the area where you're supposed to fill the little oiler up from, and you can see it right here. The little on the top there, the little swivel out latch, or whatever you want to call it, right there. Needs an opening so that I can pour oil into it, and I just completely covered it. Luckily, I'm not a crazy person, and I noticed. So I just quickly modified that and just cut it out. It doesn't really matter, especially on the top one. That's less important of a seal, unless you're filling your oiler to beyond capacity, which is not really what is physically possible in the current universal realm. And I'm just trying to be as delicate as possible with this kind of stuff. Even using this wrench giving me anxiety on brass components. I'm making sure to not have the wrench touch the brass in any other way other than just touch the nut that I'm trying to tighten down, because if I scratch the brass, once again, I will be in the corner crying massively, because it's just not an ideal situation when you're trying to preserve some history here. The lower sight glass is super tiny, and I wasn't really sure if it was just some grossness or if the actual glass was starting to deteriorate, because sometimes if there's some substance that's more acidic, it can actually start to deteriorate the glass. It's not that common in oilers, but you just never know what people are putting in here or where they left it out. Maybe acid rain started ruining it. Who knows? But it cleaned up well, and I'm completely happy that that's the case. These, like I said before, were just getting a very light, quick clean. Mainly a degrease or any other weird smudges or anything they had on them. The patina is left, and everything comes back together just fine. It's very simple. But I'm really, this exact spigot here basically sold me on this tool when I saw it. I had to have it because of that spigot. It's just crazy. I hope I can find another one day. Who knows? So this was interesting. It's clearly homemade. all of these external parts, the blower didn't come with any of these external parts, like the regulator and the oiler and the this, whatever this is, which is an air filter for what I can see. It's made out of brass and it's extremely delicate. I'm surprised. I'm surprised it lasted this long, but I just kind of lightly bent things back into a little better shape, and that's all I'm going to do. It's kind of neat, and I like it. Stop watching me. So I'm taking solid brass nails and cutting the heads off and leaving about an eighth of an inch, or maybe a little more, onto the head itself, so that I can tap these into the holes and replace the pins that held the nameplate on. And there you can see it goes together just fine. You kind of need an assortment of different thickness brass nails in order to, if you do this more often, as each kind of hole is a little bit different, obviously. I decided to add some liquid gasket to this pump slash blower. I thought it would improve performance, and it probably did. The original, I was surprised to see that there was no gasket at all. It could just be the oil itself kind of seals a little bit, but you might as well just seal it all up. I don't think this will be opened for a long time, nor will it be used in an industrial setting again, so I'm not really concerned if it leaks or not. But just in case, you might as well just put some gasket. And because it's liquid, it'll set up just fine and compress into where it needs to, and I don't have to cut a custom shaped gasket and spend my time doing that. Liquid gasket's easy and sufficient for what I'm doing here. And you can finally see how this thing works. The single vein just basically slides back and forth as this thing turns off center, and that pumps the air. It sucks in through one valve at the top and pumps it out the other. The oil here is definitely important for a seal, so I'm assuming it does need a lot of oil, and that's why the oiler on it is massive relative to the size of the tool that it's providing oil for. That size oiler I've seen on full engines. So this thing, I guess just because it's spinning all the time and fairly fast at 800 RPM, you just need the oil. So I have found some brass piping that fits beautifully with what was there previously. All I did was antique it using some blackening, some brass blackening solution. It really, at least I think it looks fairly good and pretty close to the original brass patina on the other parts, especially between the threads. That's where you really notice a patinaed brass piece. So it was just kind of something that helped me blend it more than just super shiny brand new brass that would make it look a little ridiculous. Plus, none of this stuff, like I said, was original, so I might as well go a little bit fancy with the brass components. The spigot might have come with it. I don't, any of the photos that I've seen don't have one, but I'm not really sure what this specific spigot design was used for. This blower was used, at least from the documentation, to separate sheets of paper for printing. And I don't even know why that's a whole product. And maybe that's why it's so rare, is that no one bought it. because it seems very specific. But it obviously had anything that blows air you could probably use for many other reasons. But who knows? So you just saw me put some foam into the air filter here. I thought, what's the brass mesh doing unless air particles are, like an inch in size? You might as well just put some foam to deal with that. There's nothing really blocking the foam from being sucked into the actual blower itself, but it's not going to be because it doesn't have enough force to do that. But in 100 years, when that foam deteriorates, that will be someone else's restoration problem, if it does deteriorate. And we finally have everything that was off the main body together, which is nice to see. And the oil here at first gave me a panic attack because I did pour, for the power hammer, I poured maple syrup into one of these, and I really thought it was this one because it really looked like maple syrup. But off camera, I actually had a little taste, and it's not the maple syrup one. Luckily, I should really clean that out before the maple syrup. I started lubing everything with maple syrup, but maybe if I did pour sugar in here, I could make some sort of candy with all the spinning. Who knows? The pins I'm putting in after, I wanted to kind of seat it without the pins so that the main arbor and the main shaft just kind of line up how they want to make things as easy as possible for this thing to move. And then I can attach the pulley, which is also not original. It's just a pulley that existed for pulley purposes that someone put on maybe when they bought it 100 years ago, maybe 10 days ago. I have no idea. But it did have Japanning and that old stuff on it, so it is fairly old and probably came on the blower very early in its life. So I finally get to turn it on. And it runs just fine. It's attached to kind of my little variable speed motor. And it has enough power to, actually make sound and to feel the air. I didn't know how much air this thing would actually pump out, but it's not a lot of PSI at all. Here I attach a little hose and try to show you the actual power by blowing some little wood shavings around. Look at that power. Oh my god, you've never seen this much air. It is very light duty, and that was the point. It's a very light duty blower, and it's for light duty applications. It's not going to be for air compressor type applications. Some people said this could have been a dentist tool, and it could have been, but I'm not exactly sure. So to test kind of the PSI, there is enough to blow up one of these balloons, which is really tough to do even for human mouths. These really long balloons are oddly annoying and tough to blow up by yourself. So it does do that. I'm not a master balloon artist. I wish I was, so all I did was just make a pretzel. And look how delicious it looks. It's just almost like a real pretzel. It's just amazing. This thing ran very quietly, and I was impressed. I makes me feel like I lubed it enough, so that's good. I didn't break anything. I didn't hone the inside or anything. I just have to leave as much as original as possible. But I had a lot of fun doing this one. It's different to do some things that I don't get to do all that often. But thank you all for watching, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.